My fiancée decided to take a relationship break and tour South Asia with her university friends, so I called off the wedding. Here's the story. Julie and I had been together for 6 years, engaged for nearly 2. As far as I knew, everything was fine. We had a wedding date locked in, the arrangements were made, and I thought we were on the same page. Turns out, I was way off. About 5 weeks ago, she told me she was planning this big trip to South Asia with her old university friends. She described it as some once-in-a-lifetime experience. I didn't think much of it. I wasn't about to stop her from going on a trip with her friends. I even drove her to the airport, helped with her luggage, kissed her goodbye, and told her to have a great time. Then she hit me with it, the whole, "We need to take a break" bomb. She didn't sit me down or explain anything beforehand. Nope. She casually dropped it on me while we were walking to the security line, like it was no big deal. I just stood there, stunned, thinking, what the hell is she talking about? Before I could say anything, she was waving goodbye and disappearing into the crowd. At first, I didn't even register what had happened. I drove home thinking maybe it was just a weird thing she said because she was nervous. But when I tried calling her later, I realized I was blocked. Yep, blocked on everything. Calls, texts, even her social media. I couldn't reach her at all. I checked her profiles to see if she'd posted anything about her trip. Blocked there, too. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just some throwaway comment. She meant it. She had really left for South Asia and decided to shut me out completely without a proper conversation. I figured maybe she'd cool off after a few days, so I waited. But after 5 days of total silence, I was done. I decided then and there the wedding was off. And honestly, it felt like the right move. Why should I stay with someone who thinks they can just disappear whenever they feel like it? I wasn't going to sit around waiting for her to decide when she wanted to be in a relationship again. Absolutely not. She made her choice, so I made mine. I canceled everything, the venue, the catering, the flowers, you name it. Whatever was planned for the wedding, I pulled the plug. I also decided she wasn't moving in with me in March, which had been the plan. Nope. She could figure out her living situation when she got back, because it wasn't going to involve me. Weeks went by, and I didn't hear a thing from her. No messages, no calls, nothing. Then, out of the blue, she called me one day. I didn't even recognize the number. She must have used a different phone. She casually told me she'd be back on Thursday morning, gave me her flight details, and acted like everything was normal, like she hadn't ghosted me for 5 weeks. I let her finish, paused for a second, and said, "What's that got to do with me?" The silence on her end was priceless. She didn't know what to say, and I didn't let her explain. I hung up and blocked her, just like she'd done to me. That was the end of it, or so I thought. Later that day, I figured it was time to let people know what had happened. Since the wedding was canceled, I posted a quick update in the group chat we shared with friends and family. I said, "Hey, just a heads up, the wedding is off, and so is our relationship." I didn't expect it to cause such a stir, but people had questions. When they asked what happened, I didn't hold back. I told them the truth. Julie went off to South Asia, decided we needed a break without discussing it, and then blocked me for 5 weeks. Everyone was pretty floored. Some people were genuinely upset on my behalf, which, honestly, felt kind of good. You never know how folks will react when you drop news like that, but having support made it easier to handle. By around 2 p.m., Julie finally decided to speak up. At first, she didn't say much, just asked me to call her so we could talk about everything. I wasn't interested. I told her if she wanted to explain herself, she could do it right there in the group chat. That didn't sit well with her. She shot back with, "This is between us, not everyone else." But to me, she'd made it public the moment she walked out of my life without a word. She kept messaging, trying to get me to engage, but I wasn't in the mood for her excuses. By 6 p.m., she was practically begging me to pick her up from the airport so we could talk this out. Seriously? Like nothing had happened? I told her flat out, that was your plan, not mine. None of this was my choice. And I meant every word. I wasn't about to race to the airport and play the fool after everything she pulled. If I'm honest, a part of me was still holding out for some kind of explanation that would make sense of it all. I wanted to believe there was a reason, something to justify how she treated me. But as the hours dragged on, it became clear that wasn't going to happen. She wasn't coming back with a heartfelt apology or revealing some big misunderstanding. She made her decision, and I had to deal with it. Over the next few days, I focused on putting my life back together. I wasn't about to let this mess drag me down. I started sorting out our shared accounts and making sure everything was divided. I even changed the locks on my apartment. I didn't want her showing up unannounced, thinking she could just stroll back in. I was done. I also started looking into taking a trip of my own. If she could jet off to South Asia for 5 weeks, I figured I deserved a little time away, too. After all the crap she put me through, I'd earned it. So, that's where things stood. She was coming back in a couple of days, but I wasn't planning to be there waiting. She could find her own way home. For me, this chapter was over, and I was moving on to better things. Now, let me tell you what happened next, because things escalated quickly. After I accepted the wedding was off, I figured it was only a matter of time before Julie reached out again. I was ready for it. What I didn't expect, though, was how fast she tried to play the victim. It all started when I got a message from Ella, one of our mutual friends. Ella's great. She's always been upfront with me. But this time, she seemed hesitant, like she didn't really want to get involved. She sent me a screenshot from another group chat, one I wasn't in. It was Julie, talking to her friends and spinning the whole situation to make it look like I was the one who overreacted. Can you believe that? In the chat, Julie was claiming she'd been super stressed about the wedding and needed space to clear her head. She even said something like, "I didn't mean for the break to last that long, but I thought he'd understand." And then there was the kicker. I just needed to figure out if I was ready for marriage, but he canceled everything before I could explain. I couldn't help but laugh when I read it. Seriously? She blocked me for 5 weeks and then acts like I didn't give her a chance to talk? No way. Reading those messages had my blood boiling. She was playing the victim, telling everyone I'd acted irrationally and rushed to cancel the wedding. At that point, I knew I couldn't just sit back and let her rewrite the story. I wasn't going to let her paint me as the bad guy. So, I decided to confront it head-on. I jumped back into the main group chat, where everyone was still buzzing from the news about the wedding being canceled. Everyone was trying to piece together what had happened, so I decided it was time to set the record straight. I posted in the group chat, "Just so everyone knows the truth, Julie decided we were taking a break without even discussing it with me. She blocked me for 5 weeks and now wants to act like this was all some big misunderstanding. I canceled the wedding because I'm not going to wait around for someone who couldn't respect me enough to have a conversation." The responses started rolling in almost immediately. People expressed their support and called out how messed up the situation was. It felt good to know I wasn't the only one who thought this whole thing was ridiculous. Julie stayed quiet for about an hour after that, but eventually, she chimed in. She came up with some half-hearted excuse, saying she didn't think it would go this far, and that she never meant to hurt anyone. No accountability, no real apology, just an attempt to save face. Then my buddy Trip jumped in and called her out right in front of everyone. He said, "Julie, you can't just spring a break on someone, disappear for weeks, and expect everything to be fine when you come back. That's not how relationships work." I was relieved he said it because, honestly, I was getting tired of having to defend myself. But then Julie's friend Amelia decided to step in. I'd always thought Amelia was a bit shady, and she didn't disappoint. She started defending Julie, saying she'd been under a lot of stress and that the pressure of wedding planning can really mess with your head. Amelia tried to frame Julie as the victim of anxiety and stress. Now, I get it. Planning a wedding can be stressful. But let's be real. That's no excuse for blocking your fiancé and ghosting him for 5 weeks while you're off partying in South Asia. Amelia kept going, saying things like, "You should have given Julie more time to process everything," and maybe canceling the wedding was too drastic. At that point, I'd had enough. I wasn't going to sit there and let someone who wasn't even in the relationship tell me how to handle it. So, I responded, "Amelia, with all due respect, you don't know the full story. This isn't about wedding stress. It's about the fact that Julie blocked me, cut me off completely, and didn't make any effort to communicate. I tried to reach out, I called, I texted, and I got nothing. How much more time was I supposed to give her? Another 5 weeks? A year? If Julie didn't want to be with me, she could have said that. Instead, she vanished and expected me to wait around. That's not how it works." The group chat went silent after that. I think people were starting to see just how bad things really were. Even Amelia didn't have much to say after I laid it all out. A couple of days passed, and I thought the drama might finally die down. But nope. I got another call, this time from Julie's sister, Sophia. Sophia and I had always gotten along, so I figured she might be checking in or trying to mediate. Instead, she came out swinging. "Why did you cancel the wedding without talking to Julie first?" I was floored. I didn't expect Sophia to take Julie's side, especially after everything I'd explained. "Sophia, your sister blocked me. How was I supposed to talk to her when she literally shut me out?" She didn't have much of an answer to that but kept pushing, saying Julie was heartbroken and that I should have waited until she got back to talk things through. By then, I was done with the whole conversation. I told her, "Look, I get that you want to stick up for your sister, but what she did was wrong. She didn't give me a say in the break, and I'm not going to wait around for someone who doesn't respect me. If Julie has something to say, she knows how to contact me, but I'm not going to be the one to fix this." Sophia tried to keep the conversation going, but I cut her off, saying I had to go. I wasn't about to keep rehashing the same argument with everyone Julie sent my way. That night, I got another message from Julie. This time, she was apologizing. Well, sort of. She said she was sorry for how things turned out but didn't take any responsibility for the choices she made. It was one of those non-apologies where she tried to spin it like we were both at fault. I didn't bother replying. What was the point? She'd made her decisions, and now she had to deal with the consequences. I wasn't about to let her rope me back into her drama. After that, I made sure to block her everywhere again, just to avoid any more nonsense. I was done listening to her excuses and wasn't going to let her drag this out any further. As I sat there, thinking it all over, something clicked. I had dodged a bullet. If this was how Julie handled challenges, I couldn't imagine what marriage to her would have been like. I felt bad about all the time we'd wasted. Sure, but I was relieved it ended before things got worse. Now I could move on with my life, and that's exactly what I intended to do. Update 1. After all the chaos with Julie trying to guilt-trip me into reconsidering the wedding, which, for the record, didn't work, I thought things might settle down. But of course, nothing's ever that simple. About a week after I blocked Julie for good, I got a random call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. And guess who it was? Julie's mom. Yep, Jenna. The same Jenna who could be sweet as pie to your face while oozing passive-aggressive vibes underneath. She was the queen of backhanded compliments, and I could already tell this wasn't going to be a fun conversation. She started off acting like nothing had happened. "Hi, sweetheart, how are you doing?" she asked, as though we hadn't just called off a wedding and I hadn't cut her daughter out of my life. I wasn't in the mood to pretend, so I kept it brief. "I'm fine, Jenna. What's going on?" That's when the guilt trip began. "Oh, we were all so excited for the wedding," she said, her voice dripping with sympathy. "This has been so hard on Julie. She's been crying every day since she got back. You know that, right? She's a complete wreck." I wasn't about to let her guilt me into feeling bad for Julie after everything she'd done. So, I replied, "Jenna, I'm sorry Julie's upset, but she made her choices. I didn't cancel the wedding for no reason." Then Jenna dropped this gem. "Well, maybe you overreacted a little. You know how stressful weddings can be, and sometimes people make mistakes when they're under pressure. Don't you think you should give her another chance?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was acting like Julie ghosting me for 5 weeks while partying in South Asia was just a minor misstep. I wasn't buying it. "Jenna," I said firmly, "this wasn't just wedding nerves. Julie blocked me on everything and disappeared for 5 weeks. And let's not pretend she was over there just figuring things out. I've heard things about what she was really up to in South Asia. If she had doubts, she should have talked to me, not cut me off and, well, do what she did." That caught Jenna off guard, but she quickly recovered. "I'm sure there's a misunderstanding," she said. "Julie's been under so much stress. You need to give her the chance to explain herself." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. "Jenna, stress doesn't excuse betrayal," I said. "If Julie wants to tell her side, she knows how to reach me. But I've already made my decision. The wedding is off, and that's final." Jenna wouldn't let it go, though. "Well," she said, her tone still syrupy sweet, "if you won't talk to Julie, maybe you could at least come over for dinner. We can talk about this as a family and work through it together." I was starting to lose my patience. I could feel there was more she wasn't saying. something she was trying to smooth over or hide. But I wasn't about to let myself get sucked into their drama again. I was stunned. Jenna was inviting me over for a family dinner, as if this was just some minor argument that could be smoothed over with a plate of lasagna. I knew this conversation wasn't going anywhere, so I kept it simple. Thanks for the offer, but I think it's best if we all just move on. Then I hung up. You'd think that would finally put an end to it, right? Wrong. The next day, I get a message from Julie's dad, Luca. Now, Luca's one of those old-school types who thinks he's always right, no matter the situation. He never really liked me, but he tolerated me for Julie's sake. So when I saw his message, I knew it wasn't going to be friendly. Luca didn't waste time. He basically ripped into me, accusing me of throwing away a good relationship and ruining Julie's life by not giving her a chance to explain. Then he hit me with, "Men don't act like this. You should be standing by your fiancée, not running at the first sign of trouble." That lit a fire in me. I mean, I'd stood by Julie through thick and thin, and this was my reward? But I didn't respond to Luca. I knew it would just turn into a pointless argument, and frankly, I was done. But that wasn't the end of it. A couple of days later, I got a text from Julie herself, sent from some random number. It was long, paragraph after paragraph of apologies, explanations, and excuses. She wrote about how sorry she was, how she never meant to hurt me, and how she panicked because she wasn't sure if she was ready for marriage. That's why she blocked me, she claimed, to give herself space to think. Then came the kicker. She admitted that while she was in South Asia, she'd gotten close to someone she met on the trip. She said it was a moment of weakness, that it didn't mean anything, and that it was just a kiss. But in the same breath, she asked me to consider moving past it because she realized she still wanted to marry me. I stared at that message for what felt like forever. I couldn't believe it. After everything, ghosting me, blocking me, and now admitting she betrayed me while she was abroad, she still thought we could just sweep it under the rug and move on. It was like she was living in some fantasy world where none of this had consequences. Anger bubbled up in me, but underneath it, there was sadness too. I mean, we'd spent years together. I'd pictured a whole future with her, and now here we were, tearing it all apart. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. But as I sat there, rereading her message, I realized this wasn't just about what happened in South Asia. This was about trust that she had shattered. And no apology or explanation was going to fix that. I couldn't marry someone who thought it was okay to disappear when things got tough, let alone betray me while doing it. So, I did what I should have done from the start. I blocked the number she used, deleted her message, and made a promise to myself to move on for real this time. After that, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I wasn't tied down by Julie's guilt trips or her family's meddling anymore. For the first time in weeks, I felt free to focus on myself and what I wanted for the future. And let me tell you, that felt damn good. Update 2. You'd think that after I blocked Julie and her family again, things would finally settle down, right? Wrong. Of course not. It was like they couldn't accept that the wedding was over. They kept coming at me from every angle, trying to wear me down. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. A few days after Julie's last attempt to reach out, I got another text, this time from one of her bridesmaids, Josephine. Now, Josephine and I were never particularly close. She was nice enough in group settings, but she was more Julie's friend than mine. So when I saw her name pop up, I was immediately suspicious. Her text started out harmless, asking how I was doing and saying she'd heard about the breakup. You know, the usual small talk. But I wasn't an idiot. I knew she wasn't just checking in out of the kindness of her heart. So, I kept my reply short, "Yeah, I'm fine, just dealing with everything one day at a time." Then she dropped the bomb. "I think you should hear Julie out." I stared at my phone, debating whether I should even respond to Josephine. Part of me wanted to block her and move on, but curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see what angle she was going to try. So, I replied and asked her why she thought I should hear Julie out. Josephine launched into a long rant about how Julie had been struggling and crying every day since she got back from South Asia. She claimed Julie was too scared to reach out to me directly because she thought I wouldn't listen. Apparently, Julie had been telling her friends she knew she'd screwed up but didn't know how to fix it. I sighed, feeling that familiar frustration rise up again. "Josephine, I've heard all this before. I gave Julie chances to explain herself, and she didn't take them. She blocked me for 5 weeks and then acted like everything could just go back to normal. That's not something I can just forget. Josephine kept at it, saying Julie needed space and didn't mean to hurt me. But as she went on, I realized what was really happening. Julie had sent Josephine to do her dirty work. She didn't even have the courage to face me herself. It was just more of the same avoidance and excuses. I was done. Look, Josephine, I said, I appreciate you trying to help, but this isn't something that can be fixed with a few apologies. It's over. That's it. I could tell she wanted to keep pushing, but I didn't give her the chance. I blocked her right after that. Just when I thought I'd finally shut the door on all of this, I got another message, this time from Julie's cousin, Eric. I hadn't heard from Eric in months, and now he was texting me, asking if we could meet up to talk about everything. At this point, I was beyond fed up with everyone trying to drag me back into Julie's mess. I almost ignored him, but my curiosity got the better of me again. I wanted to see what angle Eric was going to take, so I agreed to meet him for coffee. When I arrived at the cafe, Eric was already there, looking nervous. We made some awkward small talk before he finally got to the point. Look, man, he said, I know this whole thing with Julie has been a disaster. I just wanted to check in and see if there's any way you two could work things out. I almost laughed. Eric, it's done. There's nothing to work out. She made her choices, and I made mine. He shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable, like he knew he was about to say something I wouldn't want to hear. Yeah, I get that, he said, but Julie's been saying she made a mistake. And well, she's hinted that maybe if you gave it some time, you guys could try again. I set my coffee down, trying to keep my cool. Eric, no offense, but Julie didn't just make a mistake. She blocked me for 5 weeks, ghosted me, and I know about what happened in South Asia. She didn't just need space. She betrayed me. That's not something you can bounce back from. He looked startled but didn't deny it. Instead, he tried a different approach. Yeah, but what if she's serious about making it up to you? She's been talking about wanting to fix things. I shook my head. Eric, I appreciate you coming here, but it's not going to happen. Julie made her choices, and now I've made mine. If she wants to move on, that's fine, but I'm not interested in picking up where we left off. We sat there in silence for a moment, both of us knowing this conversation was a dead end. Eventually, Eric shrugged and said, I get it. I just thought I'd give it a shot. I finished my coffee, stood up, and said, thanks for trying, man, but it's over. It's time for both of us to move on. He gave me a half-hearted smile, and we said our goodbyes. After that, I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the last of it. I mean, how many people could Julie possibly send after me? But, of course, I was wrong again. The very next day, I got a message from Julie's aunt. Now, I barely knew this woman. We'd exchanged polite small talk at a couple of family events, but that was it. So when I saw her name pop up, I knew something was seriously wrong on Julie's end. Her aunt started off with the usual pleasantries, saying she'd heard about the breakup and wanted to see how I was doing. By this point, I was so over it that I just came out and asked, did Julie send you? Her response? Well, not exactly, but she's really been struggling, and I thought I could help mediate things between you two. I almost threw my phone across the room. Mediation? I texted back. There's nothing to mediate. We're done. I don't know how much clearer I can make it. Her aunt wouldn't give up. She went on about how love is worth fighting for, and how I shouldn't throw away years of a good relationship over a misunderstanding. That's when it hit me. Julie had probably been spinning her family this elaborate sob story, painting herself as the victim and making it seem like I'd overreacted. I didn't even bother replying this time. I blocked her and decided I was truly done. No more conversations, no more explanations, no more giving people the chance to drag me back into that toxic mess. I was finished, for real this time. And for a while, things actually quieted down. No more texts, no more calls, no more random family members popping into my inbox trying to guilt me into taking Julie back. It was like a weight had been lifted. For the first time in months, I could finally breathe again. No more waiting for hollow apologies or wondering what could have been. Just me, focusing on what's next. And honestly, that's exactly what I needed. Update 3. Here's how it all finally wrapped up. And of course, it didn't end quietly, because why would it? After blocking Julie, her mom, her bridesmaids, and basically her entire family, you'd think things would settle down. But no, Julie had one more move up her sleeve. It was the one that made me realize just how far she'd go to try and win me back. Or maybe just to get her way. About a month after everything went down, I received a letter in the mail. Yep, an actual letter, like it's the 1800s or something. I almost didn't open it, because, seriously, who even sends letters anymore? But the handwriting looked familiar and I figured, why not? Maybe it was one last attempt from Julie. I wasn't expecting much. Boy, was I wrong. The letter was pages long. A handwritten message from Julie, pouring her heart out, saying she missed me, regretted everything, and all the usual nonsense. She apologized for ghosting me, for the betrayal in South Asia. Yes, she actually mentioned it this time, but even that felt more like an excuse than a real admission of guilt. She said she'd been confused and that the fling she had didn't mean anything. But here's the kicker. She mentioned that she still had the key to my apartment. Yep, she still had the key. My stomach dropped when I read that. I changed the locks once already when all this started, but it hadn't even crossed my mind that Julie might still think she could access my place. I immediately got up, checked the locks, and started thinking about what else I might have overlooked. But the letter didn't stop there. It wasn't just an apology, it was a full-blown plan. She wrote about how she'd been talking to her mom and thought we should go to couples counseling to work through our issues. She even claimed she'd already made arrangements for us to meet with a counselor. Let me repeat that. She'd already booked appointments, without even asking me. I was livid. After ghosting me, betraying me, sending her family after me, and acting like I was the problem, she thought she could just take control of the situation and fix things on her terms? Toward the end of the letter, she wrote about how she believed we could start fresh if I just gave her one more chance. She said she wanted to meet face-to-face to talk things through, that she was ready to do whatever it took to make things right. I sat there staring at the letter, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. After everything she'd done, she still didn't get it. She still thought she could dictate how this was going to go. It wasn't just arrogant, it was delusional. So, I decided to play along with her old-fashioned approach one last time. I sat down, grabbed a pen and paper, and wrote her a letter back. If she wanted clarity, I was going to give her clarity. I told her, without any room for interpretation, that we were done. No counseling, no second chances, no meeting up to talk. I also told her to return the key, despite the fact that I'd already changed the locks again, and that she needed to move on, because I sure as hell was. I sent the letter back and felt a sense of closure, like I'd finally shut that door for good. But of course, it wasn't over. A week later, another letter from Julie arrived. This time, it was much shorter. She didn't argue or try to push for counseling. She said she understood my perspective, but still thought we should talk. Then she dropped a line that sent chills down my spine. She mentioned driving by my apartment a couple of times and noticing that I wasn't home. She didn't explain why she was driving by or what she was doing, but the idea that she was checking up on me like that was unsettling. It felt like this was turning into something more than just desperation. It was veering into obsession. At that point, I knew I had to take more drastic action. I wasn't about to let this spiral into a stalking situation. I called my landlord to ask about adding extra security measures, maybe even installing cameras. I wasn't taking any chances. And then, as if things weren't weird enough, I got a call from my mom. Now, my mom had been incredibly supportive throughout all this, fully aware of everything Julie had put me through. But what she told me nearly made me drop my phone. Julie had shown up at her house unannounced, asking to talk about us. Julie had crossed a serious line. She was no longer just intruding on my life. She was dragging my family into it, trying to manipulate them into convincing me to take her back. Thankfully, my mom didn't fall for it. She told Julie that I'd made my decision and that it was final. She stood firm, even when Julie got emotional and started crying. My mom made it clear that Julie needed to let go and move on. After that call, I knew I needed to take one final step to truly end this nightmare. I filed for a restraining order. It wasn't something I wanted to do, but I felt like I had no choice. Julie's behavior had become too invasive, and I needed to protect not just my own space but my family's peace as well. When Julie got served with the paperwork, she finally stopped. No more letters, no more visits, no more desperate attempts to reach me. It was like she finally got the message. Filing the restraining order didn't feel good, but it felt necessary. And in the aftermath of everything, I learned a lot about myself. I learned the importance of standing up for my boundaries, even when it's uncomfortable. I learned that I don't owe anyone endless chances, especially when trust has been shattered. Most importantly, I learned that moving on isn't just about leaving. It's about protecting your peace and creating a future where you can truly thrive. So, that's it. That's how it all ended. I'm finally free from all the drama, and for the first time in what feels like forever, I'm moving forward with my life. It wasn't easy, but I made it through. Now, I'm focused on what's next. No more looking back. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel